Hello, and thank you for having me here. So my name is Toufi Salib, and I'm going to talk about 5 missing necessities that a lot of you, even the most technologists, won't admit to it yet, and I'm hoping that we will admit to it by the end of this talk. Because if we don't get to those 5, all of them, we will not get to a global adoption of blockchain. So currently, at its peak, we got to 0.2%. When you go out of this room and into the public and tell folks about blockchain, not a lot of people know what you're talking about. Our mission is to ensure that it gets to every single Homo sapien because of what it has to offer. So why do we care? Why do we care? It's not going to the next slide, but in any case, I can tell you what's on the next slide. There are over 150 different verticals that they can benefit from the blockchain. And they're too good to pass on. Now, when we look historically of why we got to where we are here, and if we were to learn something from history, we have free researchers who were able to create solutions that are good to everyone. And here's what you can see is a picture of Albert Einstein. So this is, again, we're repeating that same picture. It was in a previous presentation. For researchers like this enabled us to see the light the way we see it today, the electricity, and we can all be thankful for this. Now, on the next slide, we're going to talk about constrained researchers use the same science to create solutions that could destroy everyone. Now, why am I telling you this? Because there's a huge problem in the current blockchain that not a lot of people are aware of. The current mining using blockchain is 10 Hiroshimas per day of energy that could be used for something else. The next slide. If you were to pick fintech, and the reason why I'm going to talk about fintech, because the opportunity here is a lot bigger than mining, and we struggled for the last 3 years to get a lot of the miners to see that, and finally we're able to get a lot of miners to participate in getting to see the bigger opportunity and not be stuck at $6.4 billion in extraction of wealth from Bitcoin alone, $3.5 billion in extraction of Ethereum alone per year. So when you see the Ether price drops, that's because a different set of people that they're actually taking that money that is supposed to be to the people by design. So global prosperity can be an opportunity for every business. What we're up against here is $100 trillion of opportunity. Just to quantify this is 10,000 times bigger than the current mining. And when we got to convince folks about this, we were able to partner with them towards how we can turn a single Satoshi to be equal $1 rather than be stuck at $3,500 for 1 Bitcoin, which means 1 Bitcoin could be equal $100 million in an economy that can work for everyone. Cars came first, then roads. This metaphor is more so to blockchain. If you think of blockchains today, they're more like cars. When you compare blockchains to current financial system, the financial system is more like the horse carriage. If you were to go in the wilderness, the horse carriage can outperform the cars. But then we built roads, and we got to a much better performance for cars. So the 5 problems that I'm going to talk about first starts with security. The current security of the blockchain system, it started, so take you a little bit back in time. There's a protocol called TCP/IP. How many of you are aware of TCP/IP? Please raise your hand. Okay, for those that are not aware, TCP/IP is the foundational layer that powers the entire internet. It's capable of transmitting value, but it's capable of transmitting information, but not value. And that's why for 30 years after that, we've built ledgers that they're centralized in banks, in governments, and so on and so forth to transmit value. So there's a ledger that says, you know, John's got $10, Joe's got $6. If John wants to send Joe $2, then they're both going to have $8. They trust that centralized ledger. And that worked for a while until it started getting exploitation from within. And with that, the security of the system is impacted from within. You can't rely on a system that you have to have an audit internally, and that internal audit has to have another audit, and then regulators and so on and so forth. It added a lot of friction, which contributed to the next problem here is efficiency. So those that exist in the current blockchain, this is not only in the current financial system. The initial blockchain was called Bitcoin, and it's still called Bitcoin, 2008, was built in a way that each and every one of you can be participating in the mining. That's no longer the case because of exploitation started about 7 years ago, which got us back to square one. The security is impacted again, and we no longer have the decentralization that we hope to have, which also impacted efficiency, 115,000 replication for every single transaction. That's the current blockchain today. So when you ask yourself why this blockchain that is supposed to be revolutionary did not make it to the remaining 99.8%, those are the reasons that I'm showing you here. Security is number one. Number two is efficiency. It is not efficient. Number three is confidentiality. A public ledger is not confidential by design, and it certainly is not private. You take privacy away, the next thing you take is people's liberty. That's not necessarily the future we want. Not for our children, not for my children, and not for yours. So the ledger was not necessarily the intent. The ledger was built to replicate a centralized system in a decentralized setting. But it wasn't the goal. The goal was the value to be transmitted at an individual level, peer-to-peer. And then the fourth problem is scalability. While many people, they talk about scalability, it is not number one. If you don't have security, if you don't have efficiency, if you don't have confidentiality, you don't need to scale. You need those three things first, and then scalability. Number 5 is interoperability. And what that means is that if you're able to have a blockchain that works well with all those 4 things, but then your neighbor has another blockchain that works very well with those 4 things, how would your users interact with each other? Do they need a third party called decentralized exchange or whatever? It's still a third party, and that third party will be attacked. So those are the 5 problems. Next slide. They are also the 5 necessary. It's not like one of them, 2 or 3. You need all 5. Next slide. So, in order to remember them, and this is intentional put in that sequence, the first is S for security, E for efficiency, C for confidentiality, scalability, interoperability. They spell the word sexy. You all want to be sexy when you wake up in the morning, when you go to sleep. Your blockchain needs to be sexy too. Next slide. So when we talk about problems, and a lot of people like Nouriel and others, they just talk about problems. We don't like those people, and I'm willing to debate them anytime. We're here to build solutions for humanity and not talk about problems, okay? There are solutions. I am witnessing the solutions from where I stand. The next wave of blockchain is not going to be a wave. It's going to be a tsunami. Those that they will resist it, they will be disrupted the most. And those that will help building it, they will help shaping the future of this planet. I have 13 seconds before my talk is over, but I'm next on the panel. And if anybody's got any questions, I think we're going to open it up to the public. After I finish here, please reach out. Let's talk. You can find me, please. Next slide. Okay, so you can find me here. This is an email. You can send me anytime. Any questions, I'm more than happy to help. Thank you.